If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, I'm Angela, and welcome to yWrite, where we have writers on the show that you can get to know and know their writing process so that you can start writing your story too. Today we're in studio and I have two guests, and they have co-written a book together. I have Dr. Pat Martin. She is a psychiatrist from Longmeadow, Massachusetts. She's been practicing for over 40 years, and she has written 4 books, including Liars, Cheats, and Creeps, Leaving the Sociopath Behind. She also has one called, her first book, The Other Couch, and Welcome to Retirement, which I think might be my book. I don't know. I think I need to read that one. She's here today with her co-author to discuss moving on from a narcissistic sociopath. So, we have some pretty heavy topics, so a little trigger warning today. And I'm going to introduce them and bring them on camera. However, today is a little bit different of an episode. One of the guests, Renee Forte, who is the co-author, will not be on camera. Now, Renee Forte has also authored 2 books, including the one that she has co-authored with Dr. Pat Martin. And she is off camera today, and she writes with a pen name. And I think it's very interesting to find out why she uses a pen name and how she went about choosing that pen name. And knowing that she's off camera, you'll be able to hear her voice. And we're going to find out more about Renee and her journey, as well as how to co-write a book together. All right, so I'm going to just really move my microphone right now, and we're going to find out from Renee Forte what it's like to have a pen name and why she chose it. Hi, Renee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, I've written 2 books with Dr. Martin, and I have started out as one of Dr. Martin's clients, and we went on a journey to write Liars, Cheats, and Creeps, and also Moving On. And I was in a long-term abusive relationship, and so part of these books are about my own journey as well as the women in our support group. And all of our identities have been changed to protect us from our abusers. And
so did you have to, I just want to ask you, did you have to file to get a pen name? How did you go about applying to get a pen name to put on the book?
No, it came out of our imaginations.
Okay.
And my own name with Pat, Renee means reborn.
Oh,
and I
that.
felt very much reborn.
Yeah.
And Forte means strong. And we tried a couple of different last names, Unchained and different things. Renee is a French name, so Forte means strong in French.
Oh, it's a beautiful name. It definitely is, and I can see why you went through with picking the name.
Yes.
But I am curious, how you go about. I do want to ask, how you go about getting, royalties or things like that with your name. How does it connect to you in your real persona?
Okay, so these books are copyrighted,
Okay.
and so when you file for a copyright, there is a special procedure when you use a pen name. So you can go online, and there's a form for that. Dr. Martin uses her real name and all of her real credentials, and I file as Renee Forte as a pen name, and I file under that. And so again, it's all to protect my real identity and to protect my children.
Yeah.
Because as the books will explain, there's not only just abuse during my marriage, but the abuse has long legs and it continues beyond. And I just want to stay safe and keep my identity safe.
Well, I'm sorry that you've gone through what you've gone through, but I am grateful, I guess, that you've gone through what you've gone through, because
Yes.
Otherwise you wouldn't be here to share the story. And, your journey, it has been long and hard, and contemplating using a pen name, I know, is something that, can be a difficult journey, and I applaud you for, taking that step.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I now want to, show you our guest that's going to be on camera. We have Dr. Pat Martin. Hi, Dr. Martin.
Hi,
how are
there.
you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show today.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
bringing Renee.
Of course.
Yes, no, I mean, it's, as a writer, I am just in awe about writing. I mean, I know the process it takes, how long, the dedication is to sit down and actually write a book, because we all have that story to tell verbally. And as a psychiatrist, you listen to quite a few stories.
Correct.
And, taking the time to sit down to write and doing it is, a huge venture to take on. So
Right.
you followed a good calling.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I studied in college English and psychology, so I kind of put them both together, right?
Yeah.
I'm a clinical psychologist. My PhD is in clinical psychology, and I've been in practice 40 years. And all of my writing, all 4 books, are informed by my clients and my practice. And I was, kind of doing a little bit of research. Why do we write? And one of the reasons we write is to inform. And I feel like all of my books are addressing a gap in the literature. So when I'd be talking to someone and say, well, you really need to read this kind of a book, and then I'd look, oh, it's not there. So that's how the books started to be created.
Yeah, they always say, write what you know, if you're looking for something and it's not there, tell the story.
And there are lots and lots of stories. And what I started to do as a clinical psychologist, I had a little notebook in my drawer of my desk at work. And when a story would come in that was just like, wow, that needs to be told.
Yeah.
That story, that person's story needs to be told. I would jot it down. And then my first book came about because I have written articles for the newspaper.
And this is The Other Couch.
The Other Couch, because my co-author in this, Helene Houston, she came up to me, believe it or not, at a church fair, and she goes, Pat, I love your writing in the newspaper about, I have 4 children, and, about my journey as a mother. Have you ever thought of writing a book? And I go, well, actually, I have. And I have a whole notebook full of ideas. And that's how the first book happened. And as you know, the hardest part, because we didn't want to self-publish, is finding a publisher.
Oh, yes.
So that was a journey unto
itself. And did you find the publisher before you wrote the book? Or I know some people will pitch the idea.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what's highly recommended, is to write a book proposal. And so we got out and found books about writing a book proposal. So we then wrote a book proposal, and we probably sent out to about 25 publishers. Some you don't hear back from at all. So you have to prepare yourself for rejection. You have to steel your loins, so to speak. And then we started hearing, this is a great topic, but not so sure. And then we'd like to do it.
Nice.
And so all 4 books have been published by Norlights Press.
Okay.
And they're the ones that when the royalties come in, will be paid by them.
Okay.
And Renee's actual name is used for payment.
Okay.
So that's how that works.
Well, that's good to know. For those
that's how
contemplating a
that
pen name,
works, that you would use your real name in order to have your Social Security number or whatever,
but it still
tax ID.
allows Renee, to stay, hidden,
Yes.
so that her identity isn't seen. Because as we know, she's getting, I'm going to say she's out of an abusive relationship. However, she's really divorced from the abusive relationship, because getting out of that relationship doesn't.
No, it
really
doesn't,
happen.
and that's why
I
we
hate to
wrote.
say that.
Yeah, well, Liars, Cheats, and Creeps came about from the journey of women in a support group I ran. I had all these women in individual therapy, and they were feeling very alone and isolated. And I said to one, I'm seeing about 5 women right now in similar situations. And they go, oh, we'd love to meet each other.
Yes.
So that's how the support group started, and that ran for 10 years.
So you started this, and and the majority of these books have stories of your patients.
Yes.
How do you go about sharing their stories? Did you have to get their permissions? I mean, obviously you changed their names. If they were blonde-head, you might have said they were redhead.
Of course, I changed
like
a lot like that. Every single person I asked for all 4 books if they would be in the stories said yes.
Did you have to get them to sign anything?
Yes, I had to have a legal document signed that they gave permission. We changed the names in The Other Couch. We changed the names in Liars, Cheats, and Creeps and Moving On. The Welcome to Retirement, except for 1 or 2 people, are their actual names. And they all read the stories and agreed to the stories. So sometimes it took several re-edits before we got it right. And this is a story about wellness in aging.
Yes.
And once you make the decision to retire, how do you move on then in a healthy way into retirement?
Yeah.
40 stories in this, 36 stories in the other couch. And this moving on is infinity number of women, but based on the women in the support group, which usually would be about 8 to 10 women.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very big undertaking when you're sharing not just other people's stories, but real stories, you know, like real stories, because you want to stay authentic to the story. You don't want to leave details out or over embellish, because you want it to be very truthful, but at the same time, you have to be very cognizant of protecting the identity of the people sharing your stories, because they are living in a world where, you know, fear is real.
Oh, yeah.
The reality of what they have to be fearful of is real, especially, you know, during, you know, whether they're married or not married, you know, going through that breakup. I mean, there's legal things that you have to be aware of.
Correct.
So, and from what I understand when I talk to Renee off camera, you know, a lot of that, you know, is about that, because you don't want it to have, you know, something that's going to come up that can harm you even more, especially when you're dealing with a manipulative type of person.
Well, any abuser is a manipulator.
So let's talk about this right here. Working on From a Narcissistic Sociopath.
Moving
you
on.
co-wrote this. So how does that work when there's two of you? Like, do you sit down together and you both write a chapter? Does one write one chapter, one write another chapter?
Well, in this particular book, Moving On from a Narcissistic Sociopath, Renee is really the voice of the women in the support group. Renee is the voice of the survivor of intimate partner violence. I am the voice of the psychologist monitoring the group, as well as the voice of the psychologist in giving advice on how do you move on post-separation or divorce, when you still have to deal with the abuser, maybe related to custody issues. You still have to deal with the abuser related to finances and perhaps alimony.
Yeah.
So there's so many issues, and fear, you know, protective orders perhaps, and being dragged back into court, on and on and on, because that's the way the abuser still shows power and control over the person that divorced them.
Oh, especially when they can use the legal system in a way that can scare you. You know, definitely, you know, puts fear in you, but financially can burden you. Which can paralyze some people, because if they need to have their truth told in court and they can't afford it, that's one way that this manipulator is, you know, really tweaking it. And you know, personally, I've seen this. I've had a few friends who have had to go through this, you know, who went through, you know, severe breakups and you know, divorces, being married to someone, especially, you know, not that it matters if they're married to someone in authority, you know, like you know, whether it's a police officer or a judge, you know, someone who runs a big company, you know, whether they have a lot of money or they don't, it can still be very traumatizing.
And part of what this book was about is, I think a lot of times people think of abuse as some, you know, kind of low-life guy and it's always in poverty, which it is quite a bit. But in my practice, which is sort of middle America, it was all over too. It's non-discriminatory. Abuse is non-discriminatory. So what we wanted to do is show this is a place that women of all ranks in life, women who are, you know, doctors, women who are CEOs, can lead this outward life, which is totally in control of their existence, running a family, being a outstanding member of the society, yet they go home and they're abused. And they're controlled, and they're saying, "What's wrong with me? Am I going crazy?" And so that's what this book is for. And not just
physical abuse. I mean,
of course.
The emotional and mental abuse is, you know, they say sticks and stones can hurt your bones and words can never hurt you. I think it's the opposite. Sticks and stones break bones, but bones can heal. Physical ailments really do have, you know, an easier, not easier, but a more able way to heal than those inside hurts of emotional and mental abuse.
Right, and the children in abuse as well. I mean, there's a whole research on something called ACE, which is about critical incidents that children have, and how the research, which is through the Center for Disease Control, shows that any kind of ongoing trauma and critical incidents like watching abuse or being yelled at or screamed at will affect your long-term life and disease.
Yeah, I mean, because children learn what they live.
They
if they
internalize
see this and it's a normal, it's normally what they've grown up with. The chances of, I hate to say the chances are greater that they will repeat it.
Well, 2 times as
don't know.
likely for boys watching a father abuse a mother.
Really?
2 times as likely, yeah. But it's more, I'm talking about their own struggles down the road because of their nervous system just being developed as young children. So that's why it's so critical that the legal system really takes hold of looking at custody and not re-abusing these children, as well as the women. So one of the things that Renee and I are going to do quite soon is give a presentation to the Hamden Bar Association so that we can train and educate lawyers, prosecutors, judges about what domestic abuse is, what should you be looking for, and how can you, in the legal system, prevent this ongoing abuse post-separation and divorce.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a whole other topic, but it's what's coming out of these books. And like when I really think of myself, why do I write? Why do I take this time? It's because when you've been in a field 40 years and learned so much, the best I could figure, other than one-on-one helping people, is writing to inform what my wisdom is from my work.
A lot of, I'm going to say a lot of women, a lot of people, before they make that call to a therapist, they may pick up a book first.
Exactly.
This is so easy to assess, to access, like whether they're buying it online or going to the library or, like starting to find out that 1, there's help out there, and 2, they're not alone.
Yeah,
and 3,
this,
people have made it through what they're going through.
This book was written because there aren't enough women support groups.
Yeah.
So this book really takes you through a full year, 52 sessions of how you go from, am I abused? To, oh my God, I am. And how is this affecting my children and me? And now what am I going to do? Getting out the divorce process, safety plans, and then this one follows up with the aftermath post-divorce.
So, and this one, you and Renee were able to work together with it. So you're sharing, what she's kind of gone through. Did she write her parts in the book?
Yes. Okay. Oh, yes. Renee's voice is very loud and clear in this book, as in Liars, Cheats, and Creeps. The other books were not about therapists, survivor voices, and so my other co-author, Helene, and I would split the stories. So she would write one, I would write one. But Renee and I would sit down and work on this and sort of frame out the book.
Yeah.
And then sort of individually do our pieces, share our pieces, edit each other, go back and forth, back and forth. I always say writing is editing, right?
Yes.
Right. You have to be willing to do that.
You want to just like write it and be one and done, and then you go back and look at it and say, oh, I need more of this, or I can say this in a different way. I can condense this. I need, to it. And whatever it is, it's a lot. And there comes a point where in the editing process, you have to say, it's done.
Sure, certainly.
Which,
and
you
usually,
can always make improvements.
Usually your publisher says that. That's when I can remember the first book. It was editing with our publisher. By our last couple books, we were just go for it.
Yeah.
We like it. It's good. Here's a little grammar change. But other than that, we were on a roll. But writing is an interesting process of telling these stories. You had asked that before. To me, they just flow out of me. These stories, I just feel like I have to tell them. And because of that, it's such an easy process to write someone else's story. Now, writing my own story, that might be more difficult.
Yeah, no, I can see
you know that?
Well, and when you take on, I was a florist for many years, grieving families come in and, you hear a lot and, some of it is just so beautiful. Some of it is very, relatable, and it becomes part of you, So, and as a psychologist, it's like really, good to ask you, like, how do you keep their lives separate from your lives? Because, obviously you're blending them in these books, but, the issues that Renee has had are, Renee's issues. So, you have taken them on, yourself.
Well, I certainly empathize and I care. But, it's 7 years of training post-college to become a PhD clinical psychologist. And part of that training is learning how to not enmesh yourself with clients. And honestly, I have to keep a clinical part of me in order to be helpful.
Right.
To be able to step away and say, okay, I feel your pain, I understand you're in pain, but let's look at some steps to take.
Right.
And so that helps. And I think for me, over my years of doing this, I've had a family and a husband, 4 children, now 6 3/4 grandchildren. You leave and you go back to your family.
Yeah.
And that has always helped me stay sane through the process of being a clinical psychologist.
Yeah. I want to ask Renee, if you can answer this question. So was it, who came up with the idea and who was able to, sorry, I'm moving the microphone a little too much. Sorry to the audience if it's noisy. But who, between the two of you, how did you approach this idea to do it? Did you approach her? Did she approach you? And, what was that like?
The first book, Liars, Cheats, and Creeps.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It came out of the support group.
It certainly came out of the support group. We realized we had a lot of stories, and one of the women in the support group, we were thinking of titles. Wouldn't it be cool if we wrote a book? And one of the members of the support group came up with this Liars, Cheats, and Creeps. And once we had a title, we couldn't let go of the idea of writing a book. And the 52 sessions then was the framework. And it's a very conversational book. It is a very easy to read book. It was imperative for us not to have a case study, not to have it in a voice of only a psychologist, not to have it a single memoir, because those books are all done. Mm-hmm. This was the first collaboration. This was the first support group in a book. And that's why it got published.
Have you written before this? Were you a writer?
No, just in my job, writing, in my life.
Okay.
But no, this was my first book, and so it took a lot of collaboration. We had to hide the identities of the women in the support group, give them different names and different occupations, but close enough to what they were.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
their situations were explainable in their traumas, and anyway they all agreed they wanted their stories shared, because even though their stories were unique to them, they were shared, but they can be shared by everyone, and they can be a lesson.
Nice.
And survivors want to help other women.
Oh, yeah.
And so
100%.
100%. So,
and women looking to be survived, who want to survive, need that.
Exactly.
We all look for a mentor who succeeded.
So this book is very much an accessible book. It's in a conversational style. And then years later, when we realized, and I've stayed very much in the trying to educate myself in domestic violence issues, that post-separation abuse has developed as a topic. Yeah. And lo and behold, I realized that it is ongoing amongst my friends in the survivor community and with myself.
And so, you suggested this
yes,
book.
It started
you
with
suggested
a dinner
this
with
book.
Pat and me, and we thought we would write an article.
Well, and I love the subtitle because it's How 4 Women Found Happiness.
Yes.
After leaving Liars, Cheats, and Creeps.
So we found.
So you have found happiness.
Yes, or we're on the road to it for whatever. But that is the goal, and it's peace, and happiness is not la-di-da. It's the idea of safety and some peace.
Safety.
Yeah.
But I want to add, you've written many poems.
Oh, she's
and
so well.
I love Renee's poems, and so we included them in both books.
Oh, nice.
And if I can just take a second to read one very quickly.
Yes,
this
please,
is at
we want to hear her voice.
Yeah. Can I read your voice? Okay. This is Liars, Cheats, and Creeps at the very end. So this is, throughout the book, the poems reflect where are you at this point in the process. And this is at the end. Face it, it's called. I face it, my past. I see it, but I reject its hold. I rebuild myself. Myself. With face wise wrinkled and eyes wide bright, surfacing now to be face to face with myself and being in this moment. That's Renee's writing. So she has written before.
Yeah. You're very, very poetic, and you can see, the conscious choice to being sitting in this moment, and saying, okay, I'm going to share this in this moment. And yeah, I mean, you've had great success with the books.
Yes, we have. The journey of marketing.
Yeah. Is a whole different than the journey of writing.
Yeah, whenever anyone asks me to sell something, I go, I'm really not that good at that. I don't like making the cold calls. But we've done a lot of presentations. A lot of our books, including Liars, Cheats, and Creeps and Moving On, are in graduate psychology curriculum now. Because one of the things I said was I never learned about domestic violence in 7 years of graduate school. Physicians aren't trained in it. Lawyers aren't trained in it. So we're trying to get these books into curriculum for grad students as well.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you both came on the show. Tell the audience, I mean, you guys, you want some really good reading? Here you go, right here. Whether you're a woman in a situation, whether you are someone who is in the legal system, if you are looking to be a psychologist, there are so many ways and so many reasons to read these. So where can they find these books?
All of the books are on Amazon.com. So you just look under Patricia Peters Martin, and these will pop up. They're very accessible. They're also, I forget what it's called, where you can do it on Kindle.
Yes.
Oh, there's a name for
yeah.
ebooks.
Ebooks, yes.
Ebooks. I'm
This
giving my
modern
age
world
away.
that
Yes,
we have,
I know.
yeah.
I'm still liking the feel of a book.
Yes, me too.
But that's where you can get them.
All right, well, I will put them to the links below.
Okay.
And our audience can find them. And Renee, thank you so much for coming on. Dr. Martin, thank you for coming on.
so
I really
much,
appreciate
Angela.
this. Has been so informative, not especially about the relationship that women go through when they're going through these abusive relationships and how they can get help, but also on, the fact that the two of you collaborated on a book and, was able to share how other women can share their stories in a safe way. So you've provided a beautiful place.
Thank you for giving us this forum to present
you're very
to women.
welcome. I look forward to finding out what happens when you go talk to the legal departments everywhere to find out what they're doing.
I'll wear a suit.
Yeah, we'll have to link that to this podcast. So thank you so much again. I want to thank Studio 954 for making this episode possible. And I want to thank you, the audience, for tuning in each week so that I can have, the glory of being here to learn these things to share with you. At this point, for those of you who are new to the show, I'm going to just give you a little writing prompt because, that's why we're here. We're here to learn how to tell our own stories on a page. So when the show ends in a few minutes, grab a pen, set your timer on your phone, your microwave, or wherever you are for 5 or 10 minutes and just start writing. And, today I'm thinking about how, we do think about writing in a pen name. Like if you're going to tell your authentic story and you're a little afraid, maybe creating that identity right now may help you to just begin and then not worry so much of what you're writing because you need to write your story. So why don't we have a little creative time today and try to figure out what kind of pen name you might use. Will you look for something that represents who you are? Will you turn to something that you admire? Maybe you're going to find a French word and use that today. So, just start writing, and we're going to see you next time on the next episode of yWrite. Thank you. Have a nice day. See you later.